Welcome to the Dairy Trend Analyzer program. This program looks at 3 years of production metrics for a given dairy herd. Its development was supported by a USDA grant, and it was done in collaboration with the Center for Dairy Excellence. It is designed to help producers and their consultants find opportunities that will have economic advantage to a dairy herd. One enters the program by pressing click. If the consultant is set up with the system, they can enter in their password, and what will happen then is the menu of herds that they are ascribing to will appear here, and they can select and pick a particular herd. On the left here is a listing of all the items that are monitored on a routine basis for dairy herds participating in DHI services. They are listed alphabetically. The user can select from this list into the items that he desires or she desires to have graphed. The ordinality of these can be changed by clicking and moving them up and down, and so one can select from all 129 various items to be graphed. Also on this screen is where we put in some important economic parameters, and perhaps one of the most important is the cost of making additional pounds of milk. This is what we call the marginal cost of making milk. The way the program estimates this is it looks at the total ration cost, in this case $7, and then looks at how that ration cost would be partitioned by the energy that's required to maintain the cow, which is a function of the animal's body weight. So as we change the body weight, we can see that the maintenance component is going to change. And then the remaining proportion goes into the production of milk at a given protein and fat level. And so based on how that energy is partitioned, we estimate what the marginal cost to make an additional pound of milk, in this case about 5.5 cents or $5.50 per hundredweight. Very important parameter. Next, the area that the user can change is the goals. So in this case, one can change the current levels on a percentile basis. So in this case, I'm looking at trying to improve milk production by 5%. That value will put me in the 96th percentile of the peer groups that I have. In this case, the peer group that I've selected is all of Pennsylvania Holstein herds. We could select other peer groups, such as all Pennsylvania Holstein herds greater than 500 cows. One also then enters in basic economic parameters. The default milk price is entered, but one can change the ration costs and other economic parameters that will be influencing any analyses that we do downstream. So once one is happy with the items selected and the economic items, one can then select the graphs. And here we have the 5 graphs based on the items that we've selected. And up here in the lower left, I'll discuss the daily milk. You see that we have 3 years of data, and it's represented as year over year. So the green dots represent the current year. The purple dots represent what's happened 3 years ago, and the red dots are the previous year. We can see this particular herd has some missing values. The data can be presented on a value basis, but one can also change that to look at how these values compared to the peer groups at that time. So we can see that this herd was all above 1, so it was above the average of what the peers were doing for those various months. We can also look at it relative to year 3, how's my herd doing? And you can see that relative to what was happening 3 years ago, there are some months that are above that, some months that are below that. And lastly, we can look at it in terms of the cumulative percentile. In other words, am I always in the top 90th percentile, or am I, here we can see some months where currently we're below, we're only in the 77th percentile of herds in Pennsylvania. So one can do that type of analysis for each of these items. We can also look at what happens when we fit a regression to the 3 years of data. So this particular herd has an average annual change in milk level of 1.83 pounds. We can compare that to the peer herds, which were gaining near 2 pounds per year. And so we see that our particular herd here is not gaining at the rate that the industry is. So they're not keeping up with the changes that the industry is realizing, and so this would be an area of concern. We can also look at the economic inference. So this looks at what's the value of changing the current milk level of 81.3 to 85.4. That would realize about $164 of marginal profit to a herd, or at a herd level of about $71,000. This is based on the milk price and ration costs that were entered previously. One can also look at singular items. So here, down here on the lower left are all the items one can select to be graphed. And this looks at the 3-year data of the herd and their peer group. It looks at what the slope is for the selected data for the herd and the peer, and again takes that ratio, and we like that ratio for numbers that are increasing to, of course, be above 1. And then it also shows what the herd average was for both the herds and the peers by year. One can select areas of this curve to look at more intensely by using the slider bar down here. We can also look at this parameter on a year-over-year basis, as we saw in the previous graphs. We can also look at extreme values, in other words, what values are plus or minus 1 standard deviation or 2 standard deviations of the herd. And we can also look at what's happened on a percentile basis. In this case, we can see what the percentile is of the herd ranking relative to all the peers by time. And the slider down here lets you change the thresholds at which the colors will change, so you can identify upper and lower values. There is also an economic summary where all of the economic models are summarized in terms of their value. So this is the value that we saw earlier of 164 per cow, of changing the milk percent by 5%, milk level by 5%, age at first calving reduction, etc. You can look at this on a per cow basis, a per herd basis, or a table basis. It also calculates a rate of return for an additional pound of dry matter. This is based on what the cost of the ration is, and therefore the cost per pound of dry matter, the estimated dry matter intake as a function of the milk and protein fat level, gives you a feed cost per hundredweight, calculates an energy corrected milk, and from this we can look at this rate of return. And of course this is influenced by what the milk price is and also what you say is the ration cost. So everything is interactive as we like to see in dashboards. The last graphical area is the area of area graphs. So here we're looking at the herd culling percentile by lactation. So first lactation, second and third lactation animals. So the cumulative values of here would be the herd culling rate. This is showing you what proportion each of those lactation groups is influencing it. And the same thing in terms of the herd population, total number of cows by lactation, and the percent cows by somatic cell count. So here we have cows that are felt to be non-infected because their somatic cell counts are 0 to 3 versus highly infected cows that have somatic cell counts above 4. In each of the graphic areas, there's at the bottom an area where the user can enter in comments, and each of these screens can be printed out and fit on a singular printed sheet. There's also a link to our dairy dashboards. So the program is interrelated with all the other programs that we have. Thank you.